Brandon and Lisa have been together for exactly 1 year. Some people might spend their anniversary quietly, just the two of them at home, while others might go out for a meal or a movie. But all that is too boring for Brandon and Lisa. They're more the adventurous type. So they set off on a camping trip. Today, all that remains of this trip are these photos and their bodies.
The young couple found shot to death in 2003 while camping off Bumble-Bee Road north of the valley. And to this day, no arrests.
Brandon Rumbaugh and Lisa Guerreri are 20 and 19 years old. Brandon works as a personal trainer, and Lisa works at SRP, an energy provider in the state of Arizona. The two live there as well, each in their own apartment in the city of Scottsdale. Lisa recently told her mother that Brandon had proposed to her. In her free time, Lisa sings in her local church choir. She also performs at family gatherings and weddings. When she was a teenager, her father was diagnosed with cancer. While he was in hospice care, she visited him and often sang with him. Her voice is even the last thing he hears before he passes away. Despite this, Lisa remains a cheerful person with a big heart. Brandon not only works as a personal trainer, but is also studying on the side. Nevertheless, he spends every free minute with Lisa. The two are very happy together, even when time, and sometimes money, is tight. They'd love to celebrate their first anniversary in a big way. They're thinking about going to Disneyland together, but that's just not financially feasible. At 19 and 20, they're not exactly raking in the big bucks yet. And besides, the two of them are happy with simpler things anyway. Brandon, in particular, loves to go camping. The Arizona landscape certainly offers plenty of exciting spots. And of course, the whole thing is also inexpensive, especially since Brandon usually sleeps in his car anyway. And Lisa thinks that sounds cool too. So for their upcoming anniversary, the couple is planning an overnight stay on the side of Interstate 17. There are several small spots off the road where you can park your car and just sleep outdoors. The area has since become quite popular with campers. Back in the early 2000s, however, it was still more of an insider tip, especially in October, when it does get a bit chilly at night. But that doesn't bother Lisa and Brandon. The prospect of spending the night alone under the starry sky in the middle of the desert is perfect for an anniversary for them. Before they leave, Lisa asks her mother and aunt not to tell her uncle about this overnight stay under any circumstances. Especially since her father died, Lisa has formed a close bond with her uncle Mike. To him, Lisa is almost like a daughter of his own. The 19-year-old knows full well that Mike would worry if he knew his niece wanted to sleep in a truck in the middle of the desert. And Lisa is right in her assessment. Mike later says in an interview that if he had known about this plan, he would definitely have tried to talk his niece and her boyfriend out of it. But even if that's cold comfort, he probably wouldn't have been able to do much anyway. Lisa and Brandon may be young, but they're still adults. They can do whatever they want. And on October 17th, 2003, that just happens to be a camping trip to Interstate 17. The two ask Lisa's mother to lend them her car for the trip. It's much more comfortable to sleep in the bed of the big truck than on the folded-down back seat of a four-seater. Lisa's mother, Paula, hesitates at first, but in the end, she can't bring herself to deny the young couple their wish and hands them the car keys. Once Brandon and Lisa are already on their way, Lisa's mother calls them again. She just wants to check if the trip is going well and if everything is okay with them. Lisa and Brandon are able to reassure her over the phone. Both of them are clearly in high spirits. Lisa says they still have a few miles to go. Lisa's mother reminds them once more to be careful. Then, mother and daughter tell each other that they love one another. And that is the last time Paula will hear from her daughter. The next morning, Paula is surprised not to hear from her daughter. Later, she describes it as her maternal instinct kicking in.
There was just something that made her feel that something bad had happened.
Brandon and Lisa were actually supposed to be back by 9 a.m. since Brandon was supposed to be working that day, but neither he nor Lisa returned from their outing. Throughout the day, Paula calls all their friends to ask them to help search for Lisa and Brandon. She also contacts the local police. They focus on Interstate 17, the freeway connecting the major cities of Phoenix and Flagstaff. Brandon had been camping there a few times in the past with his friends and had also told them about the planned trip with Lisa, so they know exactly where along the long stretch of the interstate they need to look for Brandon and Lisa. And sure enough, on Bumble-Bee Road, they spot a white truck. It's neatly parked in one of the pull-offs along the side of the interstate, but they aren't prepared for what they find in the truck's bed. It's the bodies of Brandon and Lisa lying in their sleeping bags. Both have multiple gunshot wounds to the head and upper body. The murder weapon itself is nowhere to be found at the scene where the bodies were discovered, except for the spent cartridges left behind. There are no indications of a robbery murder. The autopsies show that Lisa and Brandon were neither drunk nor otherwise intoxicated, but the fact that the two were simply shot like this just doesn't make sense. In fact, there couldn't even have been a real confrontation since both were found in their sleeping bags. Investigators suspect that they were either already asleep or had just lain down, so they were completely defenseless and unaware. Brandon's pants pockets appear to have been rummaged through, but Lisa's were not. Ultimately, however, only Lisa's belongings are missing. During the crime scene investigation, the investigators find a disposable camera, and it is precisely this camera that remains the most important piece of evidence to this day in this mysterious double murder. As the police discover, the couple had purchased this camera on the day of their departure at a store in Scottsdale. Some of the photos can be developed. One shows Brandon in the back of the truck, two show Lisa in the back, and then there is a photo that no one can explain. Investigators suspect that for one thing it is overexposed, and for another that it was taken at a moment when the camera may have been thrown away. All that can be seen in it is a small section that looks like the interior of a restaurant that was located in Bumble-Bee at the time, but nothing more than a wall and a blurry ceiling light can be made out. The camera was found about 35 meters from the car, amidst several rocks. The police believe the perpetrator may have thrown it there or lost it while attempting to destroy evidence. The police consider it possible that the perpetrator took Lisa's camcorder, among other things, because the double murder itself may have been filmed on it. Investigators know the model and even the serial number. Nevertheless, the device has not been located to this day. Did the perpetrator want to take the cameras because he feared the murder was recorded on them? Or was it something else entirely? And did the perpetrator commit the murder specifically because of footage he suspected was on the cameras? These are precisely the questions the police are still asking themselves today, because the case remains unsolved. But there are several persons of interest. According to the police, there were reportedly several suspects, but no lead was concrete enough to warrant releasing a name or making an arrest. To investigators, it all looks like a random act. Perhaps a thief tried to break into the truck to steal something and was then surprised by Brandon and Lisa, who were sleeping in the back. Lisa's family, however, doesn't buy that. They believe that someone Lisa and Brandon knew is responsible for their deaths. Lisa's uncle Mike, in particular, has a very specific theory. He suspects Brandon's friends, who found his and Lisa's bodies. Mike says he is 100% certain about one of Brandon's friends. This friend was also questioned by the police and had to take a polygraph test. Apparently, he passed it. But the motive Lisa's family suspects is jealousy. This friend of Brandon's was also said to have had a crush on Lisa. Brandon and this boy are even said to have argued about it once. He was so jealous of their relationship that he murdered the young couple. That's the theory put forward by Lisa's Uncle Mike. Shortly after the double murder, this friend is said to have moved to Nevada. This only fuels the relatives' suspicions even further. But it is, after all, just a suspicion and contradicts the investigative theory that it was a random act. In 2023, the cold case will be reassigned to a new detective. The detective in charge is supported by a group of volunteers who are still determined to help solve the case. The latest update is that this small investigative team is working with genealogical data. DNA secured at the crime scene, or where the body was found, is being compared with commercial genealogy databases. Using automated analyses, kinship relationships between the crime scene DNA and the profiles stored in the database can be identified. Even distant relatives, such as a cousin, are sufficient. Investigators use the matches to construct a family tree and thus narrow down potential suspects. Once a suspect is identified, a comparison is made with a DNA sample obtained specifically for this purpose. And if there is a match, an arrest can be made. The process is therefore quite lengthy, but it can be all the more worthwhile. Among others, the Golden State and Gilgo Beach serial killers have been convicted using this method in recent years. And perhaps this will also be possible in the cold case of Brandon and Lisa. In the case of this double murder, an unnamed item was reportedly secured at the crime scene, bearing a trace of foreign DNA that could lead to the perpetrator. However, there hasn't been a match yet. In 2020, the newly assigned detective also mentioned in an interview something about this friend of Brandon's whom Lisa's family suspects. He says the young man was declared innocent during the initial investigation after a polygraph test, but he wouldn't do that anymore. For him, everyone in the files on this double murder is a potential suspect. The cold case unit is also considering the possibility that the double murder of Lisa and Brandon is connected to another case. For one thing, they have investigated a connection to a case in Arizona. That case occurred about 6 months after the murders of Lisa and Brandon. 2 men, just like the couple, had planned to camp in their car in the desert. There, they were surprised by a man who wanted to steal their truck. During a confrontation, the perpetrator shot and killed both men. Although the police were able to track down the man, it was too late. The suspected perpetrator had already taken his own life. His DNA was compared to the evidence found at the crime scene where Brandon and Lisa were killed. However, there was no match. A connection to the murders of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen is also being considered. This young couple was also murdered, though not in Arizona, but in California. The two were found murdered in their sleeping bags after they had planned to spend the night on the beach under the open sky. A suspect was identified in this case as well, a man named Sean Michael Gallen. He also confessed to the crime. However, no connection to the murder of Brandon and Lisa could be established. Aside from the fact that both couples were found in their sleeping bags, there were no other similarities. The murder of Brandon Rumbaugh and Lisa Guerreri remains a mystery, even after 20 years. It all really comes down to whether Brandon and Lisa knew their killer or not. Because even though the couple was murdered in the middle of the night, it still happened right off the interstate. Unfortunately, there's no word on whether any large-scale efforts were made to search for witnesses, especially drivers who were on the interstate that very night and might have seen something. A possible DNA match is probably the only chance. What do you think about this whole genealogy thing? Of course, it's great that it can help solve murder cases, but there's hardly any more personal data you can reveal. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Other than that, there isn't much more to say. I hope you're having a good morning, afternoon, or evening, whichever time you're watching this video. And I hope we'll see each other again in the next video. Until then, ciao, everyone.